Good afternoon and good morning to our West Coast listeners. My name is Juan Thomas, Chair of the ABA Civil Rights and Social Justice Section. Today, I'm honored to welcome as our guest for our weekly Chair Chat, Hebah Kassem, who is the Director for the Living Economy Program at the Sierra Club in Washington, D.C. Hebah, welcome to the Chair Chat today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you. Could you first of all just tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us specifically what is your role and what do you do as Director of the Living Economy Program?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm originally from Michigan, so I grew up in Dearborn, Michigan, down the street from a steel facility, which is what we work on now in the Living Economy Program at Sierra Club. I joined Sierra Club about 1.5 years ago. I worked on, my background's in environmental and occupational health policy. And so I've worked on a number of issues in DC and then made my way back into the environmental climate EJ space. And so our work mainly focuses on industrial transformation, which includes clean government procurement, climate-friendly trade, and cleaning up heavy industry across the country, which includes heavy industry materials like steel, cement, aluminum, things in our supply chain, while supporting jobs and economic development in the U.S. And reducing health impacts on environmental justice communities.
Right. Well, let's just jump right into it then. How can we transition as a society with respect to our industrial sector to cleaner manufacturing processes without harming workers and low-income people?
Yeah, so there are two interwoven problems here. We need to address the escalating climate crisis and the harmful health impacts from industrial pollutants and exposure to communities. We also need to address the loss of manufacturing jobs and economic injustice in many parts of the country, especially in low-income communities and communities of color. I mentioned that we work on aluminum, for example. We only have a few aluminum facilities in the country, which is something that we need, but they have been shut down over the last few years. So we're working on rebuilding those. Our climate solutions are also our job solutions. It would not be possible to truly tackle the climate crisis without creating good jobs for millions of workers. So a lot of our focus is here on clean domestic manufacturing. New industrial policies also must include strong labor and equity standards to ensure that these new jobs come with family-sustaining wages, health benefits, access to unions, and equitable hiring practices.
You mentioned wages. It makes me remember and consider the Inflation Reduction Act. Could you kind of speak to how the Inflation Reduction Act, what it does, what it doesn't do, and how does it address the environmental justice issues that you work on?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a core part of our work for the last couple of years. It was a long road to get to the Inflation Reduction Act. Simply put, the IRA is the largest U.S. investment ever in climate action, environmental justice, clean energy, and jobs. It will invest billions of dollars in tax credits and other programs that could significantly reduce carbon emissions and pollution. And this is pollution that is directly impacting communities across the country. The legislation will also save money for families across the country. It will ensure each and every one of us is able to live and work in a healthy community, and it will create good, sustainable jobs. Some specific programs in the IRA that are important to highlight is it included about $60 billion in investments to support programs that will clean up pollution and create healthy, toxic-free communities. Some of these investments include the environmental and climate justice block grants to invest in community-led projects in disadvantaged communities. Another one is the neighborhood access and equity grants to support equity, safety, and affordable transportation access. And then another one is we got funding to improve energy efficiency, water efficiency, and climate resilience of affordable housing. Another big program that we actually just had a call with the EPA about is the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. This is a very critical program that was administered that is administered by the EPA, and it will invest $27 billion directly into financing projects like home retrofits, renewable energy development, clean manufacturing, transportation, to reduce pollution and support healthier communities. And a key environmental justice component of the program is that it will set aside at least 40% of the total funding, about $15 billion, for low-income and disadvantaged communities. The EPA is actually planning to come out with an announcement, I believe, right now on this, and they're opening it up to the public and engaging key stakeholders and getting feedback from impacted communities across the country.
Hebah, you've referenced the importance of the impact of public policy. And I'm sure the Sierra Club worked with many other organizations and groups around the country in Washington to get that legislation passed. Could you kind of speak to the benefit of working on these issues in coalitions and describe some of your coalition work?
Yeah, absolutely. We are in a lot of coalitions. We actually just briefed our new executive director on all the coalitions we're in, and we're in over 80 across Sierra Club. Our goal is to work in broader coalition spaces to help advance our priorities while not compromising on our values and really supporting healthier communities and jobs. So one coalition that we work with that is key for a number of our work specifically is the Blue Green Alliance. We work with them on Buy Clean, also known as Clean Government Procurement. And this is a top priority and joint initiative of environmental and union allies, both at the national, federal level and at the state level. We work very closely with our BJA partners on this policy that will help transform economy by leveraging the massive purchasing power of government to support companies that reduce pollution throughout their supply chains while creating high quality jobs for working families. The struggles for economic and environmental justice are interwoven and will only succeed if we tackle them together. So we've made a real effort to work with our big labor partners, as well as some of our strong environmental justice partners that have members across the country.
You mentioned your new president, that's Ben Jealous, right?
Yes, our new executive director.
Yep, I've met him and know him well. And I'm just curious, what are some of the, or maybe his priorities, or what are some of the biggest issues you all are working on? And what can we as members, I'm a past member of the local Illinois chapter of the Sierra Club and have worked on state issues here in my neck of the woods. How can we work to assist you in those efforts?
I appreciate you being a member for our Illinois chapter. It's one of our, I love working with our Illinois chapter. They're wonderful. And they're actually working on Buy Clean right now as we speak. So yeah, there's a whole effort that we've been working hand in hand with them on.
Right.
I would say overall for Sierra Club, I think we're working on raising public awareness of the resources made available through both the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. For all of the issues, my team specifically works on industrial decarbonization. Both these laws together provide billions of dollars in investments to prevent carbon emissions and harmful pollution, and can help ensure that businesses can take both proactive protective measures and create high quality jobs. I know that this is a top priority for our new executive director and our leadership and our team, and then also our chapters across the country. We hope to work with local communities through our chapters to ensure that the programs funded by these recent pieces of legislation are transparent and accountable to the communities that they're supposed to benefit. We also hope to support communities that are overburdened by local pollution and manufacturing by highlighting the synergies between decarbonization and reduction of toxic pollutants, so that these programs deliver truly transformational benefits, which is something that we at Sierra Club have really pushed. People usually talk about, when they talk about the climate crisis, they talk about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but we also need to talk about accounting for toxic pollution, because that is what is harming frontline and fence line communities.
Let me kind of follow up with you on that, about that balance between good industrial jobs and reducing the environmental impact, specifically in terms of carbon emissions, air and water pollution. How How do we strike that balance? What do you think policymakers should be thinking about when they try to strike that balance between those two issues?
We've been pushing for them to take into account toxic pollutants in all of their work when they're writing these laws and
Right.
investing in programs. To build a livable planet and a just society, we need to transform the way we produce goods.
Right.
So that while it creates quality jobs, it also reduces the inequities, slashes pollution, and protects life-sustaining ecosystems. I talked a little bit about Buy Clean. That's one way to do it. It's an umbrella term for procurement policies that federal and state governments can use to spur industrial transformation. Each year, local, state, and federal purchasing accounts for nearly $2 trillion in public spending, nearly 10% of our gross domestic product. And like I said, Buy Clean leverages the government's leverages the massive purchasing power of the government to support companies that reduce pollution throughout their supply chains. And it's our tax dollars. So this is something that we've been working on and pushing that, we want to save the planet. We need a livable planet. That's why our program is named Living Economy. I tell people we want a livable economy. So we want the jobs, we want to reduce the emissions, then also reduce the health impacts and the toxic pollutions on fence-line communities across the country.
Right. So then how do we focus on limiting pollution? How do we limit pollution resources in EJ communities?
So that is something that we, and I will say the Biden administration is really focused on. We have been, and it's through these policies and through programs and investments like the Inflation Reduction Act, right? Like I just talked about the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund that's coming through EPA, $27 billion in grants. These are grants, right? So they're going directly to communities, and it's this was something we advocated for. It's a bit broad so that people can apply for them, and you could retrofit things like schools or hospitals and get solar panels on all of them and reduce costs, or public housing. So you reduce costs on the consumers, but then also EV charging stations and electrifying school buses, things like that. And so that does all account for toxic pollution because we are reducing the pollution on communities when we're investing in projects like this.
So much of what you're talking about is connected to economic justice work. And this year, as chair of our Civil Rights and Social Justice section, we have been working on highlighting economic justice issues. So I appreciate you talking about the intersection between jobs, the environment, which impact the economy. And so I think that's important that people understand those connections. So my last question to you is simply this: how do we follow you? How do we learn more about your work? And how can we partner together as the American Bar Association Civil Rights and Social Justice section to collaborate and hopefully be part of your ongoing coalition work?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone can become a member of Sierra Club, as you are. So thank you for that. We have chapters in every state. We have over 60, I believe it's over 64 chapters across the country. And we are a member-based driven organization. I can send my information and our website for Living Economy, and we're happy to work with anyone. We work with a number of national and state groups across the country on a number of issues. My program specifically works on industrial transformation, as I just talked about, but we also have a clean transportation team. We have a building electrification team. We have a clean energy overall campaign. We also have our Wild America, and they work on wildlife and forestry. And so they have outings and cool projects and programs. And I think the best way to plug in is through the state chapters because they're on the ground and everywhere in the country. And they work on all of these issues.
Are you in all 50 states?
We are in all 50 states. We just have multiple chapters, like in California, for example. I think we have 14 chapters there. Right.
Well, and then could you just share the website for those who are listening?
I can. Let me find the link for how to.
I know we'll post it, but
This is our overall website, and then there's right when you log in. I think I can. Oh, there
Yep.
it's in the chat.
yeah, it was in the chat.
One, and then I can do our general one, which is
We'll share all the links to our listening audience so they can also just download and click on it. Hebah, thank you for your time today. We really appreciate your work and your commitment to advancing the cause of environmental justice. As I have said, and it's been said many times before, environmental justice is a response to environmental racism, and you're doing the work that's critically important to provide a clean environment, particularly for vulnerable communities around the country and even around the world. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right, have a good afternoon.
You too.